My parents gave my brother a $600 million company and left me with a dead piece of land. He laughed. You're worth nothing. I said nothing. 1 month later, I found what was buried underneath. Now he's begging for help, but it's too late. They always say family is everything, but sometimes it's your family that breaks you first. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 31 years old, and I was born in Portland, Oregon. I came from one of the most powerful tech families on the West Coast. To the outside world, we were a legacy. My parents, Gregory and Dana Carter, were hailed as pioneers, geniuses behind Carter Innovations, a clean tech company worth over $600 million, focused on AI-driven energy systems. People looked at them and saw success, brilliance, vision. At home, things were different. My older brother, Lucas, was the star of the family. Ivy League educated, sharp-suited, always knowing what to say, how to say it. He was 4 years older than me, and ever since we were kids, he had a way of pulling all the light in a room toward him. My parents saw him as their heir long before he ever touched a business plan. He followed their path step by step, never once stepping out of line. And me? I never fit the mold. I tried. God knows I tried. I was fascinated by the earth, by the idea that the ground beneath our feet holds power most people ignore. While Lucas learned finance, I spent hours buried in books about rock formations and mineral energy. I studied earth sciences, eventually earning my PhD in environmental engineering, and went to work with small green research firms focused on sustainable land use. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't glamorous. But it made sense to me. My parents didn't understand. You have a mind for big things, Evelyn. My father once said over dinner, his voice coated in disappointment. Why waste it digging in the dirt? Lucas used to laugh at that. She's not digging for dirt, he said once. She's digging for validation. That stung more than I let on. I spent most holidays sitting in silence as they discussed mergers, IPOs, and investor rounds. When I spoke about renewable strategies or sustainable agriculture, they'd nod politely and move on. Eventually, I stopped talking. I knew where I stood. Then one night, everything changed. I was staying late at the lab when I saw the news alert flash across my phone. The headline was short. Cold. Clinical. Gregory and Dana Carter found dead in Silicon Valley estate. Early reports suggest lab accident. I froze. My hands went numb. I read it 3 times before I could breathe again. The news channels said it was a chemical leak in their smart lab, some kind of gas system failure, while they were running late-night diagnostics. But something about that never sat right with me. My parents were cautious. Obsessively so. Their lab had redundancies, backups, and real-time monitoring. Still, everyone labeled it a tragic accident and moved on. The funeral was quiet. Press wasn't allowed. Lucas stood tall, composed, delivering a perfect eulogy that sounded like it had been written by one of his PR managers. I stayed in the back pew, numb, feeling like a stranger at my own family's farewell. 2 weeks later, the will was read in a polished glass office in downtown Palo Alto. Our family attorney, Monica Graves, a stiff, silver-haired woman who had been with the Carters for decades, sat behind a massive oak desk. Lucas was already there when I arrived, dressed in one of those expensive navy suits he loved, sipping espresso like he'd been born in a boardroom. "Evelyn," he said, standing. "Glad you could make it." I just nodded. Monica cleared her throat. "Let's begin." It didn't take long. The entire Carter estate, properties, company shares, assets, everything was left to Lucas. I'd braced myself, but hearing it out loud still hit like a slap. Then Monica paused and opened another envelope. "As for Evelyn Carter," she said, adjusting her glasses, "you have been left a 160-acre plot of undeveloped land in rural New Mexico, originally owned by your grandfather, Samuel Carter." Lucas scoffed. "That old patch of desert?" I stared at the paper in front of me, too stunned to speak. "Your grandfather requested it be passed to you," Monica added, sliding a rusted iron key across the table. "He instructed that you receive this, and only you. That land's worthless," Lucas said with a smirk. "Probably just cactus and ghosts out there." I didn't respond. I gathered the key and the deed, thanked Monica, and walked out of that glass tomb without another word. But something in my chest burned. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Grandpa Samuel. He'd been an oil prospector, a geologist, and a bit of a loner. He disappeared when I was 16. Some said he'd walked out into the desert and never came back. My father rarely mentioned him, and when he did, it was always with disdain. He wasted his life chasing dreams buried in dirt, he once said. So, why leave his land to me? I took 2 weeks off work and drove to Santa Fe, where the property was located. The land sat on the outskirts, past a broken fence and a faded sign that barely held the name Carter. I expected nothing, just dust, silence, and maybe a memory or two. Instead, I found something strange. Behind an old tool shed, half swallowed by weeds, I noticed a section of the ground that felt off, like it had been disturbed. I pushed away the debris and found a trapdoor. And beneath it, a set of stairs leading underground. I hesitated only for a second before using the key Monica had given me. The heavy metal door creaked open, and I descended into the dark. At the bottom, I found a steel-reinforced bunker, sealed tightly, filled with dust but still intact. Shelves lined the walls, covered in old mining equipment, files, and sample containers. On the center table was a weathered leather journal. On the front, in my grandfather's handwriting, Carter-X, 1991 Resource Report. My heart thudded in my chest as I flipped it open. It was filled with diagrams, hand-drawn maps, geological charts, and detailed soil analysis. Every page pointed to the same conclusion. Lithium, a high-purity vein running directly beneath the property. Untouched, undocumented, hidden. I sat there for what felt like hours, flipping through the pages, reading every note, every detail. My grandfather had spent the last years of his life mapping the resource, but he never published the findings. No one in my family ever knew. Or maybe someone did. And that's when a single question hit me hard, echoing in that silent bunker. What if the accident that killed my parents wasn't an accident at all? I didn't have proof yet, but something told me the truth had been buried, just like this lithium deposit, and it was time to dig it up. I climbed out of that bunker as the sun dipped low behind the desert hills, a fire lit in my chest. My family had dismissed me as the weak one, the dreamer. But I had just found something they'd never seen coming. And I wasn't going to let it go. After I left that bunker, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I returned to Portland, but the land never left my mind. I kept seeing those maps, those notes in my grandfather's careful handwriting. I couldn't shake the feeling that he had left me a puzzle only I was meant to solve. It wasn't just about the lithium, it was about why it had been hidden, why no one had spoken about that land for decades. And maybe, just maybe, what happened to my parents had something to do with all of it. I knew I couldn't go at it alone. The first call I made was to Julian Mendez, an old college friend and now a resource and IP attorney based in Seattle. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but when I told him I had something that could change the clean energy game, his tone shifted instantly. "I'll be on the next flight," he said. When he arrived, I showed him everything, the deed, the journal, the maps, the soil samples I'd collected. Julian's eyes lit up. "Evelyn," he said slowly, "if this is real, you're sitting on a potential gold mine, only cleaner, lighter, and 1,000 times more strategic. Do you realize how much demand there is for lithium right now?" I nodded. "I do. That's why I need to protect it." Quietly. He understood. We spent the next week structuring a shell company completely detached from the Carter name. We called it Solaria Core Solutions, and Julian made sure all paperwork led to untraceable holding entities. He also started the process of securing mineral rights for the land and preparing patent protection in case we developed any extraction methods tied to my grandfather's notes. But I needed confirmation. I needed someone with the scientific expertise to validate what I'd found. That's when I reached out to Dr. Felicity Yoon, a geologist I had once worked with on a sustainable mining project in Colorado. She was known for her precision, and more importantly, she didn't scare easily. When I told her what I'd found and asked if she'd come down to New Mexico to run a full geological survey, she didn't even hesitate. "Send me the coordinates," she said. "I'll bring my team." 3 days later, we stood under the blazing sun as her crew set up seismic sensors, drilled test cores, and ran electrical resistivity tests. I watched every move, heart pounding, pretending to be calm. Felicity barely spoke during the first 2 days. She was focused, serious, and impossible to read. Then, on the third evening, she walked into the small trailer we were using as a base. I was hunched over the journal again, tracing my grandfather's original soil readings. "You were right," she said quietly. "It's there." I looked up. "Not just lithium," she added, "but high-grade lithium, and a lot of it. The reserve stretches farther than the surface maps show. If your numbers hold, this could become one of the richest lithium sources in the country." My throat went dry. I managed to whisper, "And it's untouched?" She nodded. "Completely. It's like the earth wrapped it in silence and waited for someone to notice." I couldn't believe it. All this time, they had ignored me, mocked me, left me with what they thought was worthless. And yet, here it was. Still, I knew discovery wasn't enough. To extract lithium responsibly, I needed capital. And not just a little. We were talking about tens of millions of dollars, maybe more. But I wasn't going to take money from just anyone. I needed someone who believed in clean energy, who wouldn't twist the project into something reckless. That's when I remembered Raymond Lee, a venture capitalist known for betting big on sustainable tech. I'd met him once at a renewable energy conference. We'd spoken briefly about geothermal wells, and he had seemed genuinely interested in long-term change, not just fast profit. I reached out, unsure if he'd remember me. To my surprise, he responded within hours and agreed to a private meeting. We met in Phoenix, in a quiet hotel lounge. I laid out the geological data, the company structure, and my plans to develop an environmentally ethical extraction process based on my grandfather's notes. Raymond leaned back, tapping his fingers together. "This is massive," he said. "You're sitting on an opportunity that could supply the EV and storage markets for the next decade. Why hasn't anyone else touched it?" "Because they thought it was worthless," I said. He smiled. "I'll invest $90 million to get your infrastructure off the ground, but you keep control. I don't want your brother or anyone else swooping in and twisting this into another Carter media circus." "You have my word," I said. And I meant it. We signed the paperwork in silence. Over the next 6 months, Solaria Core Solutions quietly grew. We built a small operations base near the site and began licensing new extraction technologies. Contracts started coming in from major EV battery manufacturers. The company's value soared past $800 million, and still, no one outside my team knew who was behind it. Until Lucas found out. It started with a phone call. "Evelyn," he said, voice sharp, "we need to talk." I stayed silent. "Solaria Core," he snapped. "That's you, isn't it? You built this on family land, on something that belonged to all of us." I felt my hands go cold. "You're digging under a Carter asset, and you're pretending it's yours. You think no one would find out." I said nothing. "Not yet." Lucas laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You always said you weren't interested in the company, in power. Guess that was a lie." "No," I finally said. "I just built something you never saw coming." The next week, Carter Innovations filed a lawsuit against me. They claimed the land had been improperly transferred, that it belonged to the family estate, that I had no right to mine it. They demanded a full merger and transfer of all company assets to Carter Innovations. Lucas thought I'd fold. But I wasn't a girl sitting quietly at dinner anymore. Julian had anticipated this. Every document was bulletproof. Mineral rights were clean. The patents were filed under a trust. Ownership was ironclad. Still, the betrayal cut deeper than any legal battle. That night, as I sat in my office looking over court filings, something in me snapped. I didn't just want to win. I wanted the truth. And deep down, I still believed my parents' deaths weren't just some tragic accident. There were too many loose ends. Too many things that didn't add up. If Lucas was willing to lie about this, what else had he lied about? And what had he done to bury the rest? The lawsuit dragged on for weeks, but I never wavered. Julian had built Solaria Core with precision, every layer designed to withstand exactly this kind of attack. When the court finally ruled in our favor, I sat there in the courtroom, calm on the outside but roaring with quiet victory inside. The judge dismissed Carter Innovations' claim, confirming that the land, the company, and every patent attached to it were fully mine. Lucas stormed out before the session ended. He didn't even look at me. But that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something darker. Even though I had won legally, something still felt unfinished. Lucas didn't just want my company. He wanted to erase everything I had built. That kind of desperation doesn't come from hurt pride alone. It comes from fear. Fear that someone knows the truth. I couldn't shake the thought that my parents' deaths weren't accidental. I remembered the night it happened, the way Lucas had been first on the scene, the one who spoke to the press, handled the investigation, made all the funeral arrangements. He had taken control of everything so fast. Almost too fast. So I did what I had to do. I hired a private investigator, Marla Jennings, former federal agent, sharp and discreet. I gave her everything I knew, the timing of the accident, lab access logs, staff names, even company emails I had archived from the year before. She didn't make promises, just nodded and said, "Give me 2 weeks." During those 2 weeks, I kept building. Solaria Core signed a supply deal with a major European EV manufacturer, and our names started circulating quietly among the clean energy elite. Raymond Lee called me one afternoon and said, "You're going to change the future of energy, Evelyn. Just don't let the past slow you down." But the past wasn't done with me. On a Thursday morning, Marla called. Her voice was low and firm. "We need to meet. Now." We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe in Santa Fe. She slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were lab reports, interview transcripts, and one thing I never expected, a confession. She leaned in. "Your brother paid off a junior lab technician, Marcus Velasquez, to disable a safety protocol in your parents' lab system. The chemical leak wasn't an accident. It was triggered." I sat frozen. He offered Marcus $200,000 to walk away, erase logs, and disappear. "I found him in Nevada." He talked. My hands were shaking. "Why?" I whispered. "Lucas had already started making risky investments," Marla said. "Your parents were planning to reduce his control over Carter Innovations. He found out and decided to act first." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just nodded and stared at the folder, feeling something inside me snap into place. It all made sense, the way he handled the aftermath, how fast the company transitioned to him, how he dismissed me so easily afterward. Marla continued, "This is enough to open a federal investigation. Do you want me to pass it on?" "Yes," I said. "Every page." 2 weeks later, Lucas Carter was arrested at his home in Palo Alto. The news broke fast. CEO of Carter Innovations arrested for alleged role in parents' deaths. It was all over the networks. Investors pulled out. Partners fled. The company's stock plummeted in a matter of hours. I didn't speak to the press. I didn't need to. The day after the arrest, I made another move, quiet, precise, poetic. Through a private holding firm set up months earlier, I acquired the abandoned Carter Innovations headquarters for less than 1/3 of its original value. The same glass tower where my family once dismissed me now had new owners, and they answered to me. No one knew. Not at first. But Lucas would. I stood in that empty office, staring out at the city skyline, and thought about the girl I used to be. The one who had nothing, who was handed dirt and left behind. And now? Now I had built something from the ground up. I didn't take revenge with fire. I took it with silence, success, and strategy. That night, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "I know it was you who bought the building. Just tell me why." I didn't reply. He didn't deserve answers anymore. Lucas was denied bail. The trial was scheduled for the following month. But I didn't need to be there. My job was done. Raymond Lee called me later that week. "You good?" he asked. "I'm better than I've ever been," I said. The truth had come out. Justice had followed. And I still had work to do, because Solaria Core wasn't just a revenge story. It was the future of sustainable mining. It was my life's work. The thing no one ever expected from the Carter daughter they left behind. And yet, a part of me couldn't help wondering, if Lucas could do that to our own parents, who else had been helping him all along? The silence in that thought was heavier than anything else. The weeks after Lucas's arrest moved fast, like the world had shifted under everyone's feet, except mine. I was steady. I had known the truth would eventually surface. I just hadn't known how much it would reveal. What shocked me most wasn't just what Lucas had done, but how far he'd been willing to go. The silence from former friends and extended family was telling. No one called to ask how I was. No one offered apologies. In the end, I realized how few people ever really saw me for who I was. And yet, Solaria Core was thriving. The contracts doubled. Environmental groups praised our methods. Raymond Lee and I were now close partners, and we were already expanding operations to another site in Nevada using similar extraction technology based on my grandfather's notes. The company's valuation passed $1 billion. Investors who once courted my brother were now knocking on my door. But I kept my circle tight, my name protected, and my company guarded like a fortress. Then came the unexpected. One morning, while reviewing a new geological survey, I received an email from my old university in Oregon. The subject line read, "Invitation to speak, commencement guest speaker opportunity." I stared at it for a long time before opening it. They wanted me to speak at the graduation ceremony. The theme? Unearthing power where no one looks. That title hit something deep inside me. I sat quietly in my office that evening, looking out across the horizon. The Carter name was no longer hanging over me like a storm. Lucas was awaiting trial. Carter Innovations had filed for bankruptcy. Their once famous logo was now gone from the Silicon Valley skyline, replaced by a vacancy sign. I decided to accept the invitation. When I arrived back at my old campus weeks later, nothing had changed, and yet everything had. The hallways smelled the same. The lecture rooms had the same faded chalkboards. But now, students whispered when I walked by. A few professors who'd once called my ideas idealistic now greeted me with admiration. That was a strange feeling. On graduation day, I stood behind the podium in front of a packed auditorium of students, families, and faculty. I took a breath and began. "Years ago, I sat where you're sitting now," I said. "I had dreams, but they didn't match the world around me. My family thought I was wasting my time studying soil and minerals. They said my mind should be used for something more profitable. For a while, I believed them. I thought maybe they were right." The room was silent. Hundreds of eyes watched me closely. But what I didn't know then was that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes, what looks like failure is really a foundation. Sometimes, the things others dismiss are the things that hold the most power. I was given a piece of land that everyone thought was useless. But beneath it was one of the richest lithium deposits in the United States. And I used that to build something clean, something ethical, something that matters. A few students gasped. Some whispered to each other. I built my company Solaria Core from the ground up. I faced opposition, betrayal, and even the loss of people I loved. But I never stopped digging, literally and figuratively. Because I knew that just because someone else didn't see the value in me didn't mean it wasn't there. I paused, looking out across the crowd. Whatever you're walking into next, whether it's a job, uncertainty, or rejection, I hope you remember this. Your power might be buried, but it's not gone. It's waiting. Keep digging. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, as I stepped outside into the sun, someone was waiting near the stairs. It was Monica Graves, our old family attorney. I hadn't seen her since the day she read the will. "Evelyn," she said, offering a small smile. That was quite the speech. I studied her face. "I didn't expect to see you. I wanted to tell you something," she said. "Back when your grandfather passed, he left a letter. Your parents read it, but they never gave it to you. I found it in my personal files after Lucas's arrest." She handed me a sealed envelope. My name was written on it in my grandfather's handwriting. My heart thudded as I took it. "Thank you." She nodded once, then turned and walked away. I didn't open it right away. I waited until I was alone, back in my hotel room, the noise of the day behind me. I broke the seal with shaking fingers. Inside was a simple note, written decades ago. Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means you found the land, the truth, and maybe even yourself. They won't understand you. Not right away. But you were always the one I believed in. Don't just dig for minerals. Dig for meaning. Build something better than we ever could. I leave this to you, because you're the only one who will protect it. Samuel. Tears welled in my eyes as I folded the letter. That was the moment I realized I had come full circle. I didn't just uncover a lithium mine. I didn't just survive betrayal. I had unearthed a legacy that was buried, dismissed, and forgotten. And I turned it into power, not just for myself, but for the future. People say revenge is sweet, but success? Success is permanent. It rewrites history. It silences every voice that ever doubted you. And it speaks loudest when you no longer need to say a thing. So, that's my story. I was given a piece of land and left behind. But I didn't just rise from it. I rose because of it.